The Council's decision. The year was 2147. Earth had come a long way from its days of wars and division. Humanity had united under one banner, the United Earth Council. With technology advancing faster than anyone had dreamed, humans had spread far beyond their home planet. Colonies thrived on Mars, Europa, and even distant exoplanets. But with progress came new dangers. It all started with a message. Deep in the cold darkness of space, at Outpost Horizon, a research station orbiting the distant star Epsilon Eridani, scientists picked up a strange signal. At first, they thought it was a glitch, but the message repeated itself over and over in perfect clarity. The words weren't in any known human language, yet the universal translators worked their magic. Leave this sector or face extinction. The scientists froze. It wasn't a random broadcast. It was a direct threat, and it wasn't from any alien species humanity had encountered before. Fear spread through the outpost like wildfire. The crew contacted Earth immediately. Within hours, the entire planet knew. News channels flashed the message across every screen. People panicked. Who were these aliens? Why were they threatening humanity? And most importantly, what would humanity do? The answer would come from the United Earth Council. The Council gathered in Geneva, the heart of Earth's unified government. The room was massive, a circle of representatives from every nation on Earth. Above them, a glass dome revealed the stars shining down, a reminder of humanity's place in the universe. At the center of the room stood Chancellor Lai Wei, the leader of the Council. His face was calm, but his eyes held a storm of thoughts. The room buzzed with tension as he raised his hand. "Silence," he said firmly. The room fell quiet. "You have all seen the message," he continued. "This is not a time for panic. It is a time for decisions." The first to speak was Dr. Helena Vargas, the head of the Scientific Exploration Division. She was a brilliant woman, known for her calm and logical mind. "We don't know who these aliens are or what they're capable of," she said. "We should avoid conflict. Retreat from the sector. It's the safest option." Murmurs of agreement spread through the room, but not everyone was convinced. General Marcus Steele, head of the Earth Defense Forces, slammed his fist on the table. "Retreat. We fought too hard to back down now. If we show weakness, they'll see us as prey. We need to respond with force. Let them know humanity doesn't scare so easily." The room erupted in debate. Some agreed with Dr. Vargas, fearing the unknown. Others sided with General Steele, ready to defend humanity's honor. The arguments grew louder, voices clashing like waves in a storm. But then, a new voice cut through the noise. "Enough." All eyes turned to Captain Elena Reyes. She was a legend, a war hero known for her bravery during the Martian Rebellion. She had faced death more times than anyone in the room, and her presence commanded respect. Captain Reyes stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. "We don't know who they are. We don't know what they want. But I do know this. Humanity has never backed down from a challenge. We faced extinction before. We survived wars, disasters, and even ourselves." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But we don't need to respond with violence. Not yet. We send them a message, not of fear, not of aggression, but of courage. We show them who we are. If they still want to fight after that, then so be it. But we will not be the ones to start a war." The room fell silent. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Chancellor Lai Wei nodded slowly. "Captain Reyes speaks the truth. Humanity's strength is not just in our weapons, but in our spirit." He turned to the council. "We will vote." The vote was quick. Hands raised across the room. The decision was made. Humanity would respond with courage. Captain Reyes was given the task of crafting the message. She knew it had to be more than just words. It had to show the aliens who humanity truly was, a species that had faced the worst the universe could throw at them, and still stood tall. As the council meeting ended, the weight of the decision settled over everyone. The fate of humanity now rested on a single message. But no one knew if courage would be enough. Back at Outpost Horizon, the crew prepared to transmit humanity's response. The message was ready, but so was the fear. Would the aliens see it as a sign of strength or weakness? As the countdown began, Captain Rice stood by the comms, her hand hovering over the send button. The world watched in silence. "This is for all of us," she whispered. She pressed the button. The message shot through space, carrying humanity's unbreakable courage into the unknown. And now, all they could do was wait. Crafting the message. The message had been sent, but humanity's true test was only beginning. Back on Earth, Captain Elena Reyes returned to her ship, the ISS Valor, which was docked at Earth's primary orbital station. The stars outside the viewport shimmered like silent witnesses to what had just happened. She knew that the words they had sent could mean the difference between peace and annihilation. But as the hours dragged into days with no reply, a heavy unease settled over the planet. News channels debated endlessly. Some hailed the message as a sign of humanity's bravery, while others criticized it as reckless. The people of Earth waited, their hopes slowly giving way to fear. In the heart of the Earth Defense Command Center, Captain Rice met with her team. The room was dimly lit, holographic displays floating in the air, showing data from the Epsilon Eridani sector. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of machines and the occasional beep of incoming transmissions. "We need to prepare," General Marcus Steele said gruffly, breaking the tense silence. "They might not respond with words. We should be ready for an attack." But Ray shook her head. "We sent them a message of courage, not a challenge. We need to show them who we are, not just through our words, but through our actions." Dr. Helena Vargas, always the voice of reason, nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe we should send more than just words. Show them our history, our resilience." Reyes's eyes lit up. "Exactly. We craft a second message, one that tells our story. From our darkest hours to our greatest triumphs. We show them that humanity doesn't just survive. We overcome." The team got to work immediately. Reyes and Vargas sifted through centuries of humanity's history, selecting key moments that define the human spirit. Images of the world wars, the climate crisis, and the near destruction during the Martian Rebellion. But alongside those dark times, they included humanity's victories, the unification of Earth, the colonization of Mars, and the peaceful alliances formed with other known alien species. The message was crafted with care. It wasn't just data, it was a story of a species that had faced its own destruction countless times, but had always risen from the ashes, stronger and more united than before. As they finalized the message, Reyes recorded a personal statement to accompany it. "To those who hear this," she began, her voice steady and strong, "we are humanity. We have faced extinction, not once, but many times. We have fought among ourselves, battled our own nature, and survived the worst this universe could throw at us. But we stand here today, not as conquerors, but as survivors, as beings of courage and unity. We do not seek war, but we will not run from it. Know this, our spirit is unbreakable." The message was ready, but sending it would be a gamble. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Vargas asked quietly, as they prepared to transmit. Reyes nodded. "If they're going to judge us, let them judge us for who we truly are." Once again, the message was launched into the vast emptiness of space. This time, it wasn't just words, it was humanity's very soul. Days passed. The world held its breath. Even the stars seemed to wait. Then, just when hope seemed to flicker and fade, a new signal appeared. It wasn't like the first one. This time, the message was longer, more complex. The alien language flooded the translators, and as the words formed on the screens, the room fell into stunned silence. "Humanity," the message began, "you have shown us something we have never seen before." The aliens weren't just acknowledging the message. They were responding. But as the translation continued, It became clear that this was not the end of the story. The aliens known as the Vornak admitted they had underestimated humanity. They had expected fear, retreat, or blind aggression. Instead, they found courage. "We respect your bravery," the Vornak continued, "but courage alone will not save you from what comes next." A chill settled over the room. "We are not your enemy," the message concluded, "but there is a force coming that even we fear. Prepare yourselves." The transmission ended, but the warning echoed in everyone's minds. Humanity had proven its courage, but now a greater threat loomed on the horizon. Captain Reyes stood in the center of the command room, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond. The Vornak weren't the real danger. Something far worse was coming. And once again, humanity would have to decide: stand and fight, or face extinction. The waiting game. The Vornak's warning echoed in humanity's ears long after the message ended. Prepare yourselves. But for what? The Earth spun on, but the tension was unbearable. Governments across the globe initiated emergency protocols. Military forces were placed on high alert. The Earth Defense Fleet was deployed to strategic positions across the solar system. Yet, despite all the activity, there was only one thing humanity could really do: wait. Captain Alina Reyes found herself back aboard the ISS Valor, orbiting Earth like a silent guardian. The stars outside her viewport looked peaceful, but she knew better. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. Inside the ship's command center, the crew worked tirelessly, monitoring signals, scanning deep space, and analyzing the Vornak's message for hidden meanings. But no new threats appeared. The silence was more terrifying than any battle. "It's like waiting for a storm you can't see," said Lieutenant Karen Blake, Reyes's second-in-command. His eyes were glued to the data streams, but they all showed the same thing: nothing. Reyes nodded. The calm before the real danger. Back on Earth, people tried to go about their lives, but fear clung to them like a shadow. News reports speculated endlessly about what the Vornak's warning meant. Some believed it was a trick, that the Vornak were stalling for time before launching an attack. Others thought a new, unknown species was approaching, one even more dangerous than the Vornak. But no one had answers. A week passed, then two. The waiting gnawed at humanity's spirit. The United Earth Council convened daily, debating their next move. Some wanted to strike preemptively at the Vornak, refusing to believe their warning was genuine. Others argued to send diplomatic missions to other alien species, seeking alliances in case war came. Captain Reyes, however, knew the truth. The Vornak weren't lying. She could feel it in her bones. Their message had been too raw, too honest, but believing them didn't make the waiting any easier. Then, without warning, everything changed. The alert blared across the ISS Valor. Red lights flashed as the ship's sensors picked up something at the edge of the solar system. Unidentified objects were approaching at incredible speed, too fast to be anything human. "Report." Reyes barked, standing at the center of the command deck. Lieutenant Blake's face was pale as he read the data. "Multiple vessels, Captain. Their size and energy signatures don't match the Vornak or any species we've encountered." Reyes's heart pounded. This was it, the threat the Vornak had warned them about. "Open a channel to Earth," she ordered, "and get me visuals on those ships." The holographic display flickered to life, and the crew gasped. The ships were unlike anything they had ever seen. Massive, dark, and covered in pulsating, organic-looking material. They didn't glide through space like traditional vessels. They moved like living creatures, twisting and writhing as they advanced. "What the hell are those?" Blake whispered. Reyes didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing for certain. These were not peaceful explorers. The transmission to Earth connected, and Chancellor Lai Wei appeared on the screen, his calm facade cracking slightly at the sight of the alien fleet. "Captain Reyes," he said urgently, "what do we know?" "Not much," Reyes admitted, "but they're moving fast. We don't have much time." The Chancellor nodded grimly. "Do what you can to delay them. We'll mobilize the fleet. Reyes knew that was easier said than done. The Earth Defense Fleet was powerful, but this was something else entirely. As the alien ships drew closer, strange phenomena began to occur across the solar system. Communication systems glitched. Power outages swept through stations on Mars and Europa. Even Earth experienced strange electromagnetic pulses that caused widespread panic. Then the messages started. Not from the Vornak. Not from any known species. These messages were garbled, chaotic, and chilling. We consume. We devour. Your courage will taste sweet. The words weren't just transmitted. They were felt, like whispers inside the minds of anyone who heard them. Reyes gritted her teeth, refusing to let fear take hold. We're not going to let them scare us into submission, she said, her voice steady. But deep down, she knew this enemy was unlike anything humanity had faced before. As the alien fleet crossed the boundary into the solar system, Reyes made a bold decision. She wouldn't wait for them to reach Earth. We're taking the fight to them, she declared. The crew stared at her in shock. But then, one by one, they nodded. They knew the risks, but they also knew that waiting wasn't an option anymore. The ISS Valor and a small fleet of Earth's best ships launched toward the approaching enemy, ready to confront the unknown. Humanity had waited long enough. Now, it was time to show the galaxy that their courage wasn't just unbreakable, it was unstoppable. The enemy revealed. The ISS Valor hurtled through the void, its engines burning bright against the backdrop of the cold, infinite stars. Captain Alina Reyes stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the dark horizon where the alien fleet approached. The crew around her worked with mechanical precision, but the tension was thick, palpable in every breath they took. As they neared the enemy fleet, the alien ships became clearer on the sensors. What they saw made even the most seasoned officer's blood run cold. These weren't ships in the traditional sense. They were colossal, biomechanical monstrosities, their surfaces pulsing with a sickly green glow, as if they were alive. The structures twisted and writhed, their movements unsettlingly organic. Some even appeared to be growing, expanding as they moved closer to Earth's solar system. "Captain," Lieutenant Karen Blake called out, his voice tight with disbelief. "They're absorbing matter. Asteroids, debris, even the radiation from nearby stars. They're feeding off it." Reyes's jaw tightened, like parasites. Suddenly, the ship's communication systems flared to life. But it wasn't a distress signal or a standard transmission. It was something far worse. "We are the Sci-Fi." The voice was a guttural, multi-tone sound that echoed through the ship's speakers. It wasn't just heard, it was felt. The words vibrated in their bones, resonating in their minds, like an ancient, malevolent presence clawing its way into their consciousness. "Your courage is meaningless. Your resistance is futile. We will consume your world as we have countless others." The crew froze, the weight of the Sci-Fi's words sinking in. This wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. But Captain Reyes wasn't one to be intimidated. "Cut the transmission," she ordered. "They want to scare us. We won't give them that satisfaction." The communication ended, but the unease lingered. The Sci-Fi were unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. They didn't conquer or negotiate. They devoured. Entire civilizations had fallen to them. And now, Earth was next. Back on Earth, the United Earth Council received the Sci-Fi's message. The council chamber, usually a place of debate and strategy, was now filled with a chilling silence. The holographic image of the Sci-Fi fleet hovered above them, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Chancellor Lai Wei turned to his advisors, his face pale but resolute. "We must prepare for the worst. Mobilize every fleet, every defense system. We cannot let them reach Earth." But Dr. Helena Vargas shook her head. "Chancellor, brute force won't stop them. The Vornak tried and failed. We need a different approach." "What are you suggesting?" General Marcus Steele growled. "Diplomacy. You heard their message. They don't negotiate. Vargas hesitated. No, but maybe we can find their weakness. Every species, no matter how powerful, has one. We nodded. Find it. Fast. Meanwhile, on the ISS Valor, Reyes and her crew devised a plan. They couldn't match the Zyphor's sheer power, but maybe, just maybe, they could outsmart them. We need intel, Reyes said, pacing the command deck. We'll send a probe into their fleet, see if we can find a vulnerability. And if we don't? Blake asked quietly. Reyes met his gaze, her eyes burning with determination. Then we make one. The probe was launched, a small, stealthy device designed to slip past enemy defenses. As it neared the Zyphor fleet, the crew held their breath, watching the data stream in. What they discovered was both terrifying and hopeful. The Zyphor ships were interconnected, a hive mind controlled by a central entity known as the core. If the core was destroyed, the fleet would collapse. But the core was heavily protected, buried deep within the largest of the Zyphor vessels. It's a suicide mission, Blake muttered. Ray shook her head. No, it's our only chance. Back on Earth, the Council approved Reyes's plan. The Earth Defense Fleet would launch a full-scale assault, drawing the Zyphor's attention, while the ISS Valor and a small team of elite ships infiltrated the enemy lines to target the core. The fate of humanity rested on this mission. As the fleet prepared for battle, Reyes recorded one final message to Earth. To the people of Earth, she began, we stand on the brink of annihilation. But know this, we will not go quietly. We will fight with everything we have, not just for our survival, but for the survival of every species in this galaxy. The Zyphor think our courage is meaningless. Let's prove them wrong. The message was broadcast across the planet, inspiring hope in the hearts of billions. Humanity's spirit was unbreakable. And now, the galaxy would see just how far they would go to protect it. As the ISS Valor approached the Zyphor fleet, Reyes stood at the helm, her heart pounding in her chest. The enemy was revealed, their power undeniable. But so was humanity's determination. Let's show them who we are, Reyes whispered. And with that, humanity charged into the heart of darkness, ready to face the ultimate enemy, a new alliance. As the ISS Valor and Earth's defense fleet prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, a faint but unexpected signal cut through the comms. An encrypted message originating from deep space, far beyond the Zyphor fleet. Captain Reyes, Lieutenant Blake called out, his eyes wide as he analyzed the data. You're going to want to see this. The message wasn't from Earth, nor from any known human allies. It bore a unique signature, one that matched the Vornak. Reyes's heart skipped a beat. She had thought the Vornak were done with them after their initial warning. But now, they were reaching out. The transmission opened, and a towering figure appeared on the holographic display. The Vornak leader, High Warlord Catharn, his skin a mottled gray, and his eyes glowing with an eerie blue light, spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. Humans, Catharn began, you have proven yourselves more courageous than we believed. We underestimated your spirit, but the Zyphor are not an enemy you can face alone. Reyes straightened, her eyes narrowing. Then help us. Stand with us. There was a pause. The Vornak were a proud, war-hardened species, not known for alliances, but after a tense moment, Catharn nodded. We will fight by your side, but we are not the only ones. The hologram shifted, revealing a group of other alien species. Some Reyes recognized. The peaceful Thalrin, with their crystalline forms, and the fierce Draviks, reptilian warriors known for their brutal combat skills. But there were others, species humanity had never encountered before. All had one thing in common. They had survived Zyphor attacks, and were ready to make a final stand. The Zyphor have plagued this galaxy for millennia, Catharn continued. But together, we have a chance. Your courage has inspired more than just your people, Captain Reyes. It has awakened the spirit of resistance across the stars. For the first time since the Zyphor threat had emerged, Rise felt a flicker of hope. The United Earth Council was quick to approve the alliance. Humanity wasn't just fighting for its own survival anymore. They were leading a galactic coalition. The coalition's fleet gathered near Jupiter, a sight unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. Ships of all shapes and sizes, from sleek, crystal-powered Thalrin cruisers to the massive, jagged warships of the Draviks, hovered in formation. The Vornak ships, dark and menacing, formed the front line. Captain Reyes stood at the head of it all, commanding not just Earth's forces, but an entire alliance. A meeting of the coalition's leaders was held aboard the ISS Valor. The room was filled with tension and anticipation, as species who had never met before, and some who had been enemies in the past, now stood shoulder to shoulder. The Zyphor feed on fear and division. Rise addressed the room. But today, we show them the strength of unity. We may come from different worlds, but we share one purpose: to end their reign of terror. High Warlord Catharn grunted in agreement. Let them see that the galaxy does not bow to parasites. The leaders outlined a new strategy. The Vornak and Draviks would lead the assault, drawing the Zyphor's attention, while the Thalrin used their advanced technology to shield the smaller ships. The ISS Valor and a specialized task force would slip behind enemy lines to target the core. But they knew it wouldn't be easy. The Zyphor were ancient and powerful, and their hive mind gave them an edge no conventional force could match. As the coalition fleet prepared to launch, Rise recorded another message, this time not just for Earth, but for every species in the Alliance. "We stand at the edge of history," she began, her voice steady and firm. "The Zyphor have taken from all of us, our homes, our families, our worlds. But they cannot take our courage. They cannot take our unity. Today, we fight not as separate species, but as one galaxy, and we will show the Zyphor that we are not prey. We are the storm that ends them." The message was broadcast across the fleet, stirring hearts and minds. Soldiers from every corner of the galaxy stood ready, their resolve hardened by the knowledge that they were no longer alone. The day of the battle arrived. The coalition fleet moved as one, a vast armada of light and fire cutting through the darkness of space. The Zyphor responded immediately, their grotesque ships surging forward like a living tide. The first clash was brutal. The Vornak and Dravik ships met the Zyphor head-on, their weapons blazing. The Thalrin shields shimmered as they absorbed the Zyphor's deadly energy blasts, protecting the more vulnerable ships behind them. Meanwhile, the ISS Valor and its task force slipped through the chaos, navigating the deadly battlefield with precision. Their target was clear, the core. As they neared the Zyphor's central ship, the full scale of the enemy became clear. The core ship was a floating nightmare, its surface covered in writhing, pulsating tendrils that lashed out at anything that came close. "There it is," Rise whispered, "the heart of the beast." But reaching it wouldn't be enough. They had to destroy it and survive. With the coalition buying them precious time, Rise and her crew prepared for the final assault. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and humanity's courage would be the key to victory. The final stand. The coalition fleet fought with everything they had, but the Zyphor were relentless. Their grotesque biomechanical ships moved like predators, adapting to every tactic, countering every maneuver. The stars themselves seemed to dim under the shadow of their vast, consuming presence. On board the ISS Valor, Captain Alina Reyes felt the weight of the galaxy pressing on her shoulders. The ship shuddered as another wave of Zyphor energy pulsed through space, rattling the hull like a giant's fist. But Reyes stood firm, her eyes locked on the central display where the core ship loomed like a dark heart at the center of the nightmare. "Status report," she barked. Lieutenant Kieran Blake's fingers danced across the controls, sweat beading on his forehead. "Shields at 42%, Captain. Hull integrity holding, but we can't take many more hits like that." Reyes nodded. They were running out of time. The coalition's front lines were buckling under the Zyphor's onslaught. If they didn't destroy the core soon, the entire galaxy would fall. "We push forward," Rice said firmly. "All power to forward thrusters. Prepare for boarding." The crew stared at her in shock. "Boarding," Blake echoed. "Captain, that ship is alive. We don't know what's inside." "We'll find out," Rice replied. "And we'll end this." As the ISS Valor surged toward the core ship, the coalition forces launched a coordinated offensive. The Vornak warships led the charge, their weapons tearing through the Zyphor's outer defenses. The Drevix fighters swooped in, delivering precise, devastating strikes. The Thalrin ships created protective barriers of shimmering light, shielding their allies from the worst of the Zyphor's attacks. But the Zyphor fought back with terrifying ferocity. Tendrils of dark energy lashed out, pulling ships into the core's grotesque mass, where they were consumed and absorbed, becoming part of the enemy. Rice knew the battle outside was a distraction. The real fight was inside. The ISS Valor breached the core ship's outer shell, cutting through the pulsing, organic material with high-intensity plasma drills. A boarding team, led by Reyes herself, suited up in reinforced exo-armor and prepared to enter the belly of the beast. As the airlock hissed open, a wave of putrid, stale air rushed in. The inside of the core ship was a labyrinth of fleshy corridors, pulsating walls, and eerie, bioluminescent veins that pulsed with a sickly green light. The walls seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding like the lungs of some ancient, malevolent creature. "Stay sharp," Rice whispered, her voice crackling through the comms. "This thing is alive. Expect anything." The team advanced cautiously, weapons at the ready. Strange, whispering voices echoed through the corridors, growing louder with every step. The Zyphor weren't just biological. They were psychic, invading the minds of those who entered their domain. Suddenly, the whispers turned into screams. The walls split open, and Zyphor drones poured out, twisted, nightmarish creatures with razor-sharp limbs and glowing, hollow eyes. The boarding team opened fire, the confined space amplifying the sounds of battle. Rice fought at the front, her pulse rifle blazing, cutting down the drones with ruthless precision. But for every drone they destroyed, more emerged. "We need to move," Blake shouted. "We're being overwhelmed." Rice knew he was right. They had to find the core, and fast. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the heart of the ship, a vast, cavernous chamber where the core pulsed like a grotesque, beating heart. It was enormous, a mass of writhing tendrils and pulsating flesh, surrounded by a psychic energy so intense it made the air shimmer. And in the center of it all, something unexpected. A humanoid figure fused into the core itself. Its features were twisted and distorted, but there was no mistaking what it had once been. "It's human," Rice whispered in horror. Dr. Helena Vargas's voice crackled through the comms from the ISS Valor. "Captain, our scans confirm it. That's a human. The Zyphor. They'd been using sentient beings to power their hive mind. That's their weakness." Rice felt a surge of rage. The Zyphor had not only destroyed worlds, they had enslaved them. "We end this," she growled. But as they prepared to fire, the humanoid figure's eyes snapped open, glowing with the same sickly green light. It spoke, its voice a blend of human pain and Zyphor malice. "You cannot destroy what is eternal." The core pulsed violently, and the entire chamber began to collapse inward, pulling the team toward the grotesque mass. Rice made a split-second decision. "Blake, set the charges. We're blowing this thing from the inside." Blake hesitated for only a moment before nodding. The team planted high-yield explosives around the core while Rice covered them, her rifle blazing as more Zyphor drones poured in. With the charges set, Rice gave the final order. "Fall back. Now." The team sprinted through the collapsing corridors, fighting off drones and dodging tendrils of dark energy. As they reached the extraction point, Rice activated the detonator. The core ship exploded in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves through the Zyphor fleet. Without their hive mind, the Zyphor ships faltered, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. The coalition fleet seized the opportunity, launching a final devastating assault. The Vornak, Draviks, and Thalrin forces fought with renewed vigor, cutting through the Zyphor ranks like a blade through flesh. One by one, the Zyphor ships fell, until only silence remained. Back aboard the ISS Valor, Rice collapsed into her command chair, exhausted but victorious. The crew cheered, their voices echoing through the ship. "We did it," Blake whispered, disbelief in his voice. Rice nodded, a small, tired smile on her face. "No, we all did it. The battle was over, but the scars would remain." The galaxy had faced its greatest threat and survived, because humanity had shown that courage wasn't just about facing fear. It was about standing together, even in the face of the impossible. And now, the galaxy would never forget the day humanity led the charge and won. After the battle, the galaxy was silent. For the first time in millennia, the ever-present threat of the Zyphor was gone. The monstrous fleet had been annihilated, their hive mind shattered by humanity's unyielding courage and the unity of the Galactic Coalition. But victory came at a price, and the galaxy was left to reckon with the aftermath. On board the ISS Valor, Captain Elena Rice sat quietly in her quarters, staring out at the stars. The once pristine Earth defense flagship bore the scars of the brutal battle, deep gashes along its hull, scorch marks from energy blasts, and the faint hum of emergency power systems keeping the ship functional. But it had survived. They had survived. The door chimed softly, breaking the heavy silence. Lieutenant Kieran Blake entered, his usually sharp uniform now wrinkled and stained from days of battle. He gave a faint smile. "They're ready for you, Captain," he said softly. Rice nodded, rising to her feet. She felt the weight of exhaustion in her bones, but she pushed it aside. There was still work to be done. The Coalition's victory ceremony was held aboard the Vornak command cruiser, a ship that had once been a symbol of fear, but now stood as a beacon of hope. Representatives from every species that had fought against the Zyphor gathered in the Grand Chamber, a vast hall lined with banners from across the galaxy, each one telling a story of resilience and defiance. High Warlord Catharn stood at the center, his towering figure casting a long shadow over the assembly. His voice rumbled through the chamber, filled with a rare sense of pride. "Today, we honor those who stood against the darkness. We were many worlds, many species, but we fought as one. And it was humanity's courage that lit the path to victory." The crowd erupted in applause, a sound that echoed across the stars. Captain Reyes stepped forward, her eyes sweeping over the faces of her comrades. She saw Dravik's warriors with their battle scars, the crystalline Thalrin glowing softly in the dim light, and even the stoic Vornak, their expressions betraying a hint of respect. But most of all, she saw her crew, the people who had stood by her side when the odds were impossible. "This victory wasn't just ours," Rice began, her voice steady. "It belongs to every world that refused to be consumed, to every species that chose to fight instead of flee. The Zyphor thought courage was meaningless, but we proved them wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We lost many along the way. Friends, allies, whole civilizations. But their sacrifice will not be forgotten. The galaxy is free because we stood together. And we will continue to stand together, to ensure that no darkness ever threatens us again." The hall was silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling over the crowd. Then, slowly, the applause began again, a ripple that grew into a wave, filling the chamber with the sound of hope. But victory was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the Coalition remained united, working together to rebuild what had been lost. The Zyphor's destruction left a power vacuum in the galaxy, and the Coalition's leaders knew that unity was the only way to prevent chaos from taking hold. The United Galactic Council was formed, a new governing body representing every species that had fought in the war. For the first time in history, Humanity had a seat at the table, their role as defenders of the galaxy forever etched into the stars. Captain Rise was offered a position as Earth's ambassador to the Council, but she declined. "I'm a soldier," she said simply, "not a politician." Instead, she returned to the ISS Valor, leading exploration missions to the farthest reaches of space. The battle against the Xyphor had shown her that the galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of unknown threats. But it was also beautiful, filled with endless possibilities. Years passed, and the story of humanity's unbreakable courage became legend. Children on distant worlds grew up hearing tales of the Battle of the Core, of the brave humans who had led the charge against the Xyphor. Monuments were built, honoring the fallen, and celebrating the unity that had saved the galaxy. But for Rise, the greatest monument wasn't made of stone or metal. It was the coalition itself, a living testament to what could be achieved when courage and unity triumphed over fear and division. One evening, as the ISS Valor drifted through the uncharted expanse of a distant nebula, Rise stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched out before her, infinite and eternal. Blake approached, standing quietly by her side. "Do you think they're really gone?" he asked softly. Rise didn't answer immediately. She stared out into the void, remembering the horrors they had faced and the countless worlds the Xyphor had devoured. "Maybe," she said finally. "But even if they aren't, we'll be ready." Blake nodded. "Because of our courage." Rise smiled faintly. "Because of our unity." The two stood in silence, watching the stars blaze brightly in the darkness. The galaxy had been forever changed, but humanity's courage, and the alliances they had forged, ensured that no matter what threats lay ahead, they would face them together. And in the endless expanse of space, that courage would shine like a beacon for all who dared to dream of a better future. The end.